Okay, here's the thing. Here's the thing about the Sasha Riley recordings. I made a video about it late yesterday, and in that video, I was pretty upset having listened to the recordings, and I do not recommend that most people go and listen to them. These are audio recordings that are purported to be firsthand accounts of Sasha Riley, who is an Iraqi war veteran who they were trafficked by their stepdad to Jeffrey Epstein and his associates. And independent journalist Lisa Voldang has published them to her Substack, Outlaws of Chivalry. And I made my video yesterday to warn people, like, I don't think that any of y'all should go listen. I don't think most people should listen. I regret listening. And in the comments, I was chatting with some people, and so many folks were apologizing and saying, I'm so sorry, but I can't listen. Look, y'all, you can be a good ally to Epstein's victims. You can advocate for justice for the victims of Jeffrey Epstein and whatever other powerful men will be charged at the end of this, without having to listen to those tapes. You don't have to do that. You don't have to listen to it. However bad you think it is, it's way worse. It's way worse. You can't unlisten to it after you listen to it. You understand? So before you go Google it, just know it will be the most traumatic thing you've ever heard. But the thing is, y'all, is that I was thinking about this yesterday, because while these are unsubstantiated, there are lots of details that other YouTubers have put together, right? Corroborating evidence, timelines line up. And also Sasha Riley has made these accusations publicly before. And the thing is, though, y'all, like so many other victims have as well. Donald Trump has been found liable for sexual assault, right? How many women have accused him in the past? And in these tapes, Sasha said that they would be willing to testify against multiple powerful men who are still in government, still in power. And those include Donald Trump, Andy Biggs, Jim Jordan, Lindsey Graham, and Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. So again, uncorroborated at this point in time. But damn, y'all, I went back this morning. I was talking with a friend of mine about this on the phone earlier. I went back this morning and I listened to a bunch of the testimony from Anita Hill during the Clarence Thomas confirmation hearings. I was 11, 12 when that was going on, so I did, we all talk about Anita Hill, but how many of us have actually listened to her testimony? I'm going to play a clip of it, part of it, for you in a moment. We all should have listened to her. This nation should have listened to her. Fucking Joe Biden and all of the other senators on that committee hearing should have listened to her. And they didn't. Women who take these tremendous risks with their personal career, with their lives, with their relationships with other people, to speak out against powerful men, right? And then they're not believed. And I guess I'm thinking about what's happening now. And yes, it's beyond time for all of this to come to light, right? Pam Bondi and the Trump regime are currently suppressing as hard as they can, right? They're attacking other countries. They're threatening to attack Greenland. They're attacking Americans in Minnesota. Donald Trump is threatening the Insurrection Act because he doesn't want the Epstein files released. Because if there's anything in there that substantiates anything that Sasha Riley said, it's 100 million thousand times worse than whatever you could have conceived of. Although there is an element like QAnon, right? Pure projection. Every accusation from these guys is a confession. And as fantastical as it can seem, like you can't believe that people are capable of this level of depravity. Really, at this point in time, we don't think that Donald Trump is capable of this level of depravity. So I'm going to play for you a clip of Anita Hill's testimony. I really encourage you to listen. It's disturbing in that she is very honestly under oath describing what Clarence Thomas said and did, and nobody believed her. And that the world would look very different right now if men had believed women, if men had believed victims. Not just Anita Hill, but so many others. And then I want to come back and I want to talk for a minute after you watch the clip. It's about 10 minutes long, so if it's not something that you can stomach right now, just maybe skip ahead, and I'll be back in a minute or 10.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Thurmond, members of the committee, my name is Anita F. Hill, and I am a professor of law at the University of Oklahoma. I was born on a farm in Okmulgee County, Oklahoma in 1956. I am the youngest of 13 children. I had my early education in Okmulgee County. My father, Albert Hill, is a farmer in that area. My mother's name is Irma Hill. She is also a farmer and a housewife. My childhood was one of a lot of hard work and not much money, but it was one of solid family affection as represented by my parents. I was reared in a religious atmosphere in the Baptist faith, and I have been a member of the Antioch Baptist Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma since 1983. It is a very warm part of my life at the present time. For my undergraduate work, I went to Oklahoma State University and graduated from there in 1977. I am attaching to this statement a copy of my resume for further details of my education. Thank you. I graduated from the university with academic honors and proceeded to the Yale Law School, where I received my JD degree in 1980. Upon graduation from law school, I became a practicing lawyer with the Washington, D.C. firm of Wald, Harkrader and Ross. In 1981, I was introduced to now Judge Thomas by a mutual friend. Judge Thomas told me that he was anticipating a political appointment, and he asked if I would be interested in working with him. He was, in fact, appointed as Assistant Secretary of Education for Civil Rights. After he had taken that post, he asked if I would become his assistant, and I accepted that position. In my early period there, I had two major projects. The first was an article I wrote for Judge Thomas's signature on the education of minority students. The second was the organization of a seminar on high-risk students, which was abandoned because Judge Thomas transferred to the EEOC, where he became the chairman of that office. During this period at the Department of Education, my working relationship with Judge Thomas was positive. I had a good deal of responsibility and independence. I thought he respected my work and that he trusted my judgment. After approximately 3 months of working there, he asked me to go out socially with him. What happened next and telling the world about it are the two most difficult experiences of my life. It is only after a great deal of agonizing consideration and great number of sleepless nights that I am able to talk of these unpleasant matters to anyone but my close friends. I declined the invitation to go out socially with him and explained to him that I thought it would jeopardize what at the time I considered to be a very good working relationship. I had a normal social life with other men outside of the office. I believed then, as now, that having a social relationship with a person who was supervising my work would be ill-advised. I was very uncomfortable with the idea and told him so. I thought that by saying no and explaining my reasons, my employer would abandon his social suggestions. However, to my regret, in the following few weeks, he continued to ask me out on several occasions. He pressed me to justify my reasons for saying no to him. These incidents took place in his office or mine. They were in the form of private conversations which would not have been overheard by anyone else. My working relationship became even more strained when Judge Thomas began to use work situations to discuss sex. On these occasions, he would call me into his office for reports on education issues and projects, or he might suggest that because of the time pressures of his schedule, we go to lunch to a government cafeteria. After a brief discussion of work, he would turn the conversation to a discussion of sexual matters. His conversations were very vivid. He spoke about acts that he had seen in pornographic films involving such matters as women having sex with animals and films showing group sex or rape scenes. He talked about pornographic materials depicting individuals with large penises or large breasts involved in various sex acts. On several occasions, Thomas told me graphically of his own sexual prowess. Because I was extremely uncomfortable talking about sex with him at all, and particularly in such a graphic way, I told him that I did not want to talk about these subjects. I would also try to change the subject to education matters or to non-sexual personal matters, such as his background or his beliefs. My efforts to change the subject were rarely successful. Throughout the period of these conversations, he also from time to time asked me for social engagements. My reaction to these conversations was to avoid them by eliminating opportunities for us to engage in extended conversations. This was difficult because at the time I was his only assistant at the Office of Education, or Office for Civil Rights. During the latter part of my time at the Department of Education, the social pressures and any conversation of his offensive behavior ended. I began both to believe and hope that our working relationship could be a proper, cordial, and professional one. When Judge Thomas was made chair of the EEOC, I needed to face the question of whether to go with him. I was asked to do so, and I did. The work itself was interesting, and at that time it appeared that the sexual overtures which had so troubled me had ended. I also faced the realistic fact that I had no alternative job. While I might have gone back to private practice, perhaps in my old firm or at another, I was dedicated to civil rights work, and my first choice was to be in that field. Moreover, at that time, the Department of Education itself was a dubious venture. President Reagan was seeking to abolish the entire department. For my first months at the EEOC, where I continued to be an assistant to Judge Thomas, there were no sexual conversations or overtures. However, during the fall and winter of 1982, these began again. The comments were random and ranged from pressing me about why I didn't go out with him to remarks about my personal appearance. I remember his saying that someday I would have to tell him the real reason that I wouldn't go out with him. He began to show displeasure in his tone and voice and his demeanor, and his continued pressure for an explanation. He commented on what I was wearing in terms of whether it made me more or less sexually attractive. The incidents occurred in his inner office at the EEOC. One of the oddest episodes I remember was an occasion in which Thomas was drinking a Coke in his office. He got up from the table at which we were working, went over to his desk to get the Coke, looked at the can and asked, "Who has put pubic hair on my Coke?" On other occasions, he referred to the size of his own penis as being larger than normal, and he also spoke on some occasions of the pleasures he had given to women with oral sex. At this point, late 1982, I began to feel severe stress on the job.
That the most embarrassing question involved, this is not too bad, women's large breasts. That's a word we use all the time. You testified, you drew an inference that Judge Thomas might want you to look at pornographic films, but you told the FBI specifically that he never asked you to watch the films. Is that correct? The fact is, flatly, he never asked you to look at pornographic movies with him. Quote, this is not too bad, I can read it. Thomas liked to discuss specific sex acts and frequency of sex, close quote. You said you took it to mean Judge Thomas wanted to have sex with you, but in fact, he never did ask you to have sex, correct?
No, he did not ask me to have sex. He did continually pressure me to go out with him, continually, and he would not accept my explanation as one as being valid.
So that when you said you took it to mean we ought to have sex, that was an inference, a mere allegation.
Senator, I would suggest to you that for me, these are more than mere allegations. These are the truth to me. These comments are the truth to me.
I'm not questioning your statement when I use the word allegation. I know about sexual harassment and discrimination against women, and I think I have some sensitivity on it. How reliable is your testimony in October of 1991 on events that occurred 8-10 years ago? How sure can you expect this committee to be on the accuracy of your statements?
I guess one really does have to understand something about the nature of sexual harassment. It is very difficult for people to come forward with these things.
I've got to determine what your motivation might be. Are you a scorned woman? Do you have a militant attitude relative to the area of civil rights? Do you have a martyr complex? The issue of fantasy has arisen. Are you interested in writing a book?
It is appropriate to ask Professor Hill anything any member wishes to ask her to plumb the depths of her credibility.
You are not now drawing a conclusion that Judge Thomas sexually harassed you.
Yes, I am drawing that conclusion. That
well,
is
then I don't understand.
Pardon me?
Then I don't understand.
Do you have anything to gain by coming here? Has anybody promised you anything by coming forth with this story now?
The witness did not say anything to the FBI about the described size of his penis, the description of the movie Long Dong Silver, about the pubic hair in the Coke. I did think that Senator Specter pointed out some inconsistencies. All we've heard for 103 days is about a most remarkable man, and they scoured his every shred of life, and nobody but you has come forward. If what you say this man said to you occurred, why in God's name would you ever speak to a man like that the rest of your life?
That's a very good question.
I do think when we're looking at Republicans, especially Republican politicians, especially Donald Trump, we have to view it, their behavior, their choices, their words, as if we are interacting with a narcissistic abuser because, right, okay. It is that DARVO, deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. It is that every accusation is a confession. For example, Mike Johnson, Donald Trump, the Republicans, they love to try and say that people on the political left are inciting political violence, stoking political violence. They literally incited a violent, bloody insurrection at the Capitol on January 6th. Donald Trump stokes political violence. He tries to get his followers on the right who are maybe predisposed to violence. He tries to get them to commit violence against their neighbors who have a different political persuasion than them. Everything they do is about violence and intimidation. So for me, when I think about the level of projection that we hear from the political right, I do wonder, after listening to Anita Hill, after listening to Sasha Riley, after everything we have found out so far in the last year, and how much the Republicans, Donald Trump, Pam Bondi are hiding about the Epstein files. I do wonder how much of QAnon is got a bit of truth to it, how much it is a projection, right? Donald Trump ran on releasing the Epstein files because he claimed it was all Democratic elites that were in there. I just wonder how much of that is projection, right? Especially now that he's saying it's a hoax, forget about it. It's a hoax, it's a hoax. It's a hoax. There's nothing there. We don't need to release these. Stop talking about it. Move on. He called his own followers stupid for wanting the Epstein files released. Pam Bondi right now is in violation of federal law because she's doing Donald Trump's bidding. She's breaking the law for Donald Trump by refusing to release the Epstein files. Day before yesterday, Rep. O'Connor said that the judges agreed to appoint a special master in the case to get compliance with the law. The American people have a right to know what's in the Epstein files. Jeffrey Epstein's victims deserve justice. And for me, I just think how many decades justice has been delayed by men in power, politicians in power, who have not believed women, who have not taken seriously the concerns of victims who have risked so much to come forward. And I know we can get really bogged down in thinking about how often justice has been denied in the past, how different the world would be now if people had listened to Anita Hill, people had listened to other women who are brave enough to come forward. And we can get bogged down thinking about the political reasons why powerful men have chosen to let all of this go for so long. But I think going forward, what we have to do is to continue to fight for justice. We have to be determined not only to get justice for Jeffrey Epstein's victims, but to right the wrongs of the past, right? To make sure that justice was delayed, but that it will not be denied. We'll see what happens with the Sasha Riley files, or videotapes or audio recordings. But at the end of the day, there's enough in the Epstein files. There's enough from the testimony of Jeffrey Epstein's other victims, and it all has to come to light. Powerful, wealthy men have been suppressing and misdirecting people for a long time about all of this. And in the midst of all of this other chaos and violence and instability that Donald Trump is stoking on purpose, we cannot be distracted from the truth that we have to make sure that this comes to light. We have to make sure that justice is done. Delayed, but not denied. So that's sort of where I land on this. Again, please don't go listen to the Sasha Riley recordings. I really encourage you. I wish I could get into more detail about it, but I don't think that you should listen. Please take care of yourselves. We have an awful lot of work to do, and just living in 2025 and 2026 America is traumatic enough. We're traumatized on a daily basis. I don't think that for most of us, we need to be subjected to the most horrific things that you've ever heard. Knowing that the president and other powerful men who currently, listening to Lindsey Graham's crash outs over the last couple of weeks, how frantic he sounds, and knowing the kinds of accusations, thinking about the ways that Clarence Thomas has voted on SCOTUS, thinking about the behavior of SCOTUS, thinking about the behavior of so many powerful Republican men, if everything is true that Sasha said, if everything that's in the Epstein files comes to light, it all makes sense. So we gotta fight for justice. I'll leave it there.